Okay, so we're diving into Rich Dad's prophecy today. And let me tell you, Thor, Kiyosaki doesn't hold back.
No, he doesn't.
He's predicting this massive stock market crash, like seriously massive. Says it could leave all those traditional retirement plans, your 401k, IRAs,
Right.
basically dead in the water.
Yeah.
He calls it a financial perfect storm, which is a pretty intense way to put it. But then he offers this lifeboat, this idea of building a financial ark to survive and thrive.
What I find so interesting is how Kiyosaki uses history to kind of back all this up. He connects things like, say, the fall of the Roman Empire to what he sees happening in America right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's arguing that when societies don't address how people support themselves after they stop working, it causes these huge problems, not just for individuals, but for the whole system.
It's like we're all on the Titanic, headed straight for that iceberg.
It's a powerful analogy.
And here's the thing. Kiyosaki's not just some talking head. He's actually been through a major financial crash himself. Lost everything in a business. Had to start over completely.
Yeah, he talks about that experience a lot. Calls it his own personal financial crash course.
More valuable than any MBA.
Exactly. And it really highlights this shift we've seen from defined benefit pension plans, the kind where your employer guaranteed your retirement income. Those are fading away.
Yeah.
And in their place,
Yeah.
defined contribution plans, like the 401ks we talked about.
Where you're basically on your own.
Exactly. You're responsible for your own investments. Kiyosaki calls this over-reliance on others for financial security the chicken coop mentality.
A chicken coop.
Basically, a false sense of safety.
So we've got the warning, but he doesn't just leave us hanging, right? That's where this whole financial arc idea comes in.
Right.
And one thing that stood out to me was his focus on understanding accounting. And I don't mean just like balancing your checkbook.
No, he means really understanding where your money is, how it's working or not working, and how to make it work harder for you.
Exactly.
And he breaks investing down into 4 levels. The first one he calls small deals.
All deals, okay.
But think of it like dipping your toes into the investing world.
Yeah.
It can be anything from like buying and selling used stuff for a profit to investing in a friend's food truck. Just getting comfortable with the whole idea of investing, building some confidence, even if it's with small amounts. He compares it to learning a sport. You wouldn't jump straight into the pros, right?
Right. So what's after those small deals? What's the next level up?
Level 2 is where you start getting into bigger private market investments. This is investing in private companies, real estate, that sort of thing. These usually have the potential for higher returns, but also come with more risk and often need a larger initial investment. Kiyosaki calls this the middle class level, where you're aiming for those bigger returns, but you still have some support.
So you start small, gain experience, and then carefully take on more as you learn. It makes sense. But then Kiyosaki, he's known for some pretty unconventional ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
What's next?
This is where his passion really shows. Level 3, real estate. He truly believes that owning real estate, that's one of the most stable ways to build long-term wealth. It's about having something tangible.
He dives into some pretty specific real estate terms too, like cash-on-cash return and phantom cash flow. Those were a little intimidating at first, I have to admit.
They can sound a bit jargony,
Yeah.
but they're pretty straightforward once you break them down. Cash-on-cash return basically tells you how much actual cash profit you're making on a property compared to the cash you put in. So if you buy a rental property for, let's say, $100,000, and after expenses, you have $5,000 in profit at the end of the year, that's a 5% cash-on-cash return.
Okay, that makes sense. What about phantom cash flow? What makes it phantom?
So say you've got a mortgage on that rental. Every month, some of your rent goes towards paying down the principal, right?
Right.
That reduction in what you owe, that's phantom cash flow. It's not cash you can immediately spend, but hidden equity building up in the property. It's like a savings account that's growing behind the scenes.
Interesting. So it's less about the immediate cash flow and more about the long game of building wealth through equity. That makes sense, especially with real estate.
Exactly. And that's what Kiyosaki is all about. For him, real estate is not just buying and selling for a quick buck. It's about building this portfolio of properties that generate income and provide long-term financial security.
Okay, so we've got small deals, bigger private investments, and then real estate. That's 3 levels of this financial arc. What's at the very top, the final piece?
That would be level 4. Kiyosaki calls it the sophisticated level.
Uh-oh.
This is where we're talking about financial instruments like options, which can be quite complex and high risk.
So this is like the penthouse suite of investing, not for beginners.
Exactly. He compares it to a high-speed game of finance, needing specialized knowledge, a high tolerance for risk.
Yeah.
You have to really understand how markets work.
And I'm guessing this is where some people might start to get a little skeptical.
Oh, absolutely. Kiyosaki knows he has critics. He even addresses them directly in the book. He's very clear that these strategies, especially those in level 4, are not for everyone. They require education, experience, and a solid support network.
He's not afraid to say, hey, this isn't some get-rich-quick scheme.
Not at all. He actually believes those who blindly follow the traditional path, who stay inside that chicken coop, remember, they're the most vulnerable, especially if there's a big economic shift.
So he's saying building this financial arc, it's not about blindly following rules. It's about educating yourself, thinking differently, taking control.
Exactly. It's about thinking critically about your finances, preparing for different possibilities, and taking a proactive approach.
So we've talked about why Kiyosaki sees this financial arc as so important, but how does he suggest we actually do it? What are the practical steps?
Well, one of the big things is it's not enough to just save money. You have to make your money work for you.
Make it work for you, right? Not just sit there.
Exactly. And he talks about knowing the difference between assets, things that put money in your pocket, and liabilities, things that take money out.
Which reminds me of that famous line of his, your house is not an asset. It's about really understanding where you stand financially.
Yes. He says many people think of their homes as assets because they put money into them constantly. The mortgage, property taxes, repairs. But if those costs are more than any income it generates, then it's not an asset, it's a liability.
It's about looking at your situation honestly, even if it's a little uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Kiyosaki wants us to be real with ourselves, understand our finances, and make smart decisions that line up with our goals.
So it's not about some magic formula. It's about being financially literate, right? And not just being good at math. It's understanding how this world works.
Exactly. Investing, taxes, even starting a business. He really believes that the more you know, the better decisions you'll make, and the better you'll be able to build that secure financial future.
It's about becoming financially fluent. Speaking of which, Kiyosaki doesn't just stop at the numbers, does he? He also talks about the emotional side of money, like controlling your emotions, not letting fear or greed run the show when you're making financial decisions.
Oh, absolutely. He believes that being emotionally intelligent is just as important as being financially intelligent when it comes to money.
It's like you need to be the one in the driver's seat, not your emotions.
Exactly. And he tells this crazy story about the Essex, this whaling ship that sank after getting rammed by a whale. The crew, they managed to escape in lifeboats, but they were terrified of rumors about cannibals on a nearby island. So they chose to sail away instead.
Really?
And in a cruel twist of irony, they ended up resorting to cannibalism themselves to survive.
Oh, wow. That's intense. But I see his point. When fear takes over, you can make some pretty bad choices, especially with money.
Exactly. And on the other hand, so can getting too greedy. It's about finding that balance, making smart decisions based on not just your gut or some hot stock tip you heard.
So it's like Kiyosaki's always saying you need that rich dad mindset, staying calm, thinking long term, even when everyone else is freaking out.
Right.
Speaking of things that can make people freak out, what about taxes? Kiyosaki has some pretty strong opinions on those too, doesn't he?
He does. He sees them as something to understand and leverage, not just fear. Remember those 4 quadrants he talks about, the E, the S, the B, and the I. Employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. Each one has its own set of tax rules.
Okay, yeah, let's break those down a bit. I think that's a distinction a lot of people might not even think about.
Right, so the E quadrant, employees, they're in a tough spot. Their taxes are taken out before they even see their paycheck. Not much wiggle room there. The S quadrant, the self-employed, they have a bit more flexibility. They can deduct business expenses, lower their tax burden. But Kiyosaki says the real opportunities are in the B and I quadrants, the business owners and investors.
Because they've got more control over how they structure things.
Right, exactly. They can incorporate, use tax-advantaged accounts. There are strategies and incentives specifically designed for business growth. Kiyosaki's point is the tax code, yeah, it's complex, but it's not the enemy.
It's about knowing how to play the game.
Precisely.
And this is where having a good team of advisors can be huge. Accountants, financial planners, people who really know their stuff.
Absolutely. Kiyosaki is a big believer in building a strong team. He even tells this funny story about how he used to interview potential accountants. He'd ask them, what's 1 plus 1?
Okay, I have to ask, what did he want them to say?
Well, if they said 2, He saw it as a red flag. Too obvious. If they tried to be clever and said 3, he wouldn't hire them either. But if they said, what do you want it to be?
Oh, I get it.
Then he knew they got it.
They were thinking strategically.
Exactly. They understood the art of accounting, how to find solutions within the rules.
That's brilliant. Finding advisors who aren't just number crunchers, but who can really help you achieve your goals.
Exactly. It's about trust, but also you're still the one in charge.
Captain.
You have to understand what your advisors are suggesting, not be afraid to ask tough questions. And ultimately, you make the final decisions.
So we've talked about financial literacy, emotional intelligence, building a team, understanding taxes. That's a lot. But what if someone's ready to start building their financial arc, but they don't have a lot of resources to work with? Does Kiyosaki have advice for them?
He does, and it's very encouraging. He gets it. Not everyone has a ton of money to invest in real estate or start a business, but he emphasizes that being resourceful and creative can be just as valuable as having capital.
Right.
He shares tons of stories about how he bootstrapped his own ventures, found ways to get started with little to no money down.
He's all about thinking differently.
Totally. He tells this great story about his first business. They made these nylon and Velcro wallets. He had a great product, but no money for advertising. So what did he do? Partnered with a local radio station, offered them a share of the profits to promote the wallets on the air.
That's thinking outside the box.
Right. Win-win. The station gets revenue and his business gets tons of exposure.
Okay, that's a perfect example. You don't always need a ton of money. You need to be creative, use your network.
He's also a huge advocate for building intellectual property, creating something that can generate income even when you're not actively working.
Like he did with those rock bands.
Exactly. He partnered with Pink Floyd, Van Halen, to make licensed merchandise. Smart move, right? Tapped into their fan base, generated a new income stream, and he didn't have to be a musician himself to do it.
It's about finding those opportunities, using your strengths and interests.
And for Kiyosaki, a big part of that is understanding what he calls the velocity of money.
Velocity of money, okay.
It means how quickly your money returns to you so you can reinvest it and grow your wealth.
He uses the example of earning a 5% return versus a 50% return, right?
At 5%, it takes 20 years to get back what you put in. But at 50%, only 2 years.
Huge difference.
Kiyosaki's point is, it's not just about how much you earn, but how fast you can turn that income into more assets.
He's not saying everyone's going to get 50% returns, though, right?
No, definitely not. But he's saying you should look for investments that fit your goals, your risk tolerance, and how long you want to invest for.
And it goes back to that rich dad mindset again, doesn't it? Being proactive, taking charge.
It's about shifting your thinking from, I don't have enough, to how can I create more? From being passive to taking control.
And being willing to challenge the way things are usually done, right? Kiyosaki, he wants people to really own their financial futures.
He does. And for him, it starts with understanding how money works, becoming financially literate, and then taking action. It's not about waiting for the right time. It's about making now the right time.
So we've covered a lot. Kiyosaki's predictions about a stock market crash, his strategies for building a financial arc. But what I keep coming back to is this. What does he see as the real danger here? Is it just about people losing money?
Well, that's part of it, but it's bigger than that. He's worried that when people lose faith in the systems they rely on, like the stock market or government retirement programs, it can create a ripple effect of fear and uncertainty.
So it's not just individual portfolios, it's about the potential for something much bigger.
Exactly. Kiyosaki believes that financial instability can lead to social unrest, political problems. He even mentions violence.
So it's not just about money, it's about creating a safer, more stable future.
Right. And he believes it starts with individuals taking control of their own lives, their own finances, and not depending on systems that might not always have their best interests at heart.
Creating their own safety net, building that resilience, financially and emotionally, so they can handle whatever comes their way.
He's talking about a real shift in mindset, from reacting to things to anticipating them, from being dependent to being independent.
It's about becoming more self-reliant, right? Less dependent on these big systems.
Exactly. And it goes back to that financial arc idea. Kiyosaki uses that image for a reason. I mean, even if there hadn't been a flood, Noah was still better off having built that ark. He was ready for anything.
He had a plan.
Right. He took action. He created a safe haven. That's what Kiyosaki wants for everyone. That sense of preparedness, that feeling of, hey, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay.
It's not about being afraid, it's about taking control, having that solid foundation. One thing that really stuck with me was Kiyosaki's point about finding your why. Why are you doing all of this? It can't just be about money, right?
He says everyone's why is different. For some, it's about taking care of their families. For others, it's about having the freedom to do what they love without worrying about money. And for others, it's about making a difference, giving back.
Having that bigger purpose.
Right. And when you're clear about your why, Kiyosaki believes you're more likely to stay focused on your goals even when things get tough. It's like, okay, this is hard, but this is why I'm doing it.
It gives you that extra push.
Huh?
He also talks about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I don't just mean advisors, although those are important, but mentors,
Yeah.
friends, building a whole network of support.
He's big on learning from others, finding people who are on the same path, who can offer advice, encouragement, even keep you accountable.
Right, like having a support system. He even suggests starting an investment club or a mastermind group.
Oh, yeah, where you can all share ideas, learn from each other's experiences.
Bounce things off each other.
Exactly.
It's like surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, make you think differently, and challenge you to be better.
And that's true for anything, not just finances.
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Rich Dad's Prophecy, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from all of this?
That financial security, it doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and have it. You create it.
To build it.
You take control, you learn, you build that foundation.
You become the architect of your own financial future.
Exactly.
And you build that financial arc to help you navigate whatever life throws your way.
Because who knows what the future holds?
And Kiyosaki acknowledges it might sound overwhelming, but he also reminds us it's not about being perfect. It's about taking that first step, deciding to make a change, and being open to learning along the way.
Mistakes are part of the process.
They're how you learn and grow.
Exactly.
So, like Kiyosaki would say, it's time to stop being a passenger and become the captain of your own ship. Steer your own course. This deep dive, it was just a glimpse into the world of Rich Dad's Prophecy. Now it's up to you to take what you've learned and chart your own course.
What will your first step be?